Hello and welcome to Daily Records. I am Tommy Burton, and I hope you enjoyed the little series I did on the birds. And that contest is still going on, and it will be going on all the way through June 15th. So go over to my main channel. The link is up above in the description box up there. There's a link that says Tommy Burton's VC channel. Go check that out and look at the birds contest. It's called And Your Bird Can Sing, and it's got the 5 questions that I'm asking, and so you can win a copy of David Crosby. So but we're ending the series on the birds, and so for the next couple of days, just for a few days, I'm going to kind of reset a little bit. And for the next few daily records, we're going to talk about some recent pickups that I have, and just to talk about them and show them to you. And the first is the recent reissue of Paul McCartney's Chaos and Creation in the Backyard, released on September 13th, 2005. This is listed as the 13th album, solo album by Paul McCartney, and I lovingly refer to it as McCartney 3. Those of you that has followed Paul McCartney's career, his first solo Beatles, post-Beatles album was just called McCartney, and it featured McCartney playing all the instruments in kind of a very do-it-yourself home studio approach. And then after Wings broke up, he did McCartney 2, which was kind of the same sort of aesthetic, just him playing all the instruments, a little more synthesizer friendly, or synthesizer heavy. He was using a lot of synthesizer around that time, early 80s. And then this album came out in 2005, produced by Nigel Godrich, who worked with Beck and Radiohead, most specifically, a couple of the artists that Nigel had worked with. But Nigel kind of wanted Paul to get back, into doing that sort of do-it-yourself thing. And so this album features Paul playing most all of the instruments, just kind of like McCartney and McCartney 2. And I'm going to pull it out and show you guys the vinyl, if I can, so you can get a look at it. This was reissued just this past week, and so I never owned this on vinyl until now, but there is an insert featuring the drawings. The first single from this album was a pop song called Fine Line, which was a very catchy, melodic Paul McCartney song. Go figure, Paul McCartney doing melodic music. So there is the drawing on the other side and the lyrics here. This is the standard 180 gram black vinyl version featuring the amalgam. If you turn it over both ways, it says Paul McCartney, which was part of the artwork for this album. The front cover is an old picture of Paul in the backyard. The line drawings are by Brian Clark, but Michael McCartney, Paul's brother, did the cover photo. This is from 1962, Our Kid Through Mom's Net Curtains. So that's the credits on that. But this was the last album he released for EMI. He signed a deal with Hear Music, which was part of Starbucks in 2007. But he since has reverted back, the catalog and everything, back to Capitol Records, EMI, his old label. And so this is the reissue that came out on the Capitol label. And this was really one of the first times that McCartney was not involved in producing or self-producing one of his studio albums since Give My Regards to Broad Street, 84. So he had kind of gone back to letting someone else take the reins. And from what I understand, there's some other channels that talk more about this, particularly Beatle James Griffith, the vinyl professor. He talks a lot about this album. He did a great review of this album, and talking about kind of the background behind it and what McCartney was going through during that time in his work with Nigel. But I mentioned the single Fine Line, which is the lead-off track. There's another track on there called Friends to Go. And McCartney has later said that was dedicated and influenced by George Harrison. But Nigel Godrich and McCartney kind of had a little bit of a clash in personality. Nigel kind of said he wasn't sure about working with Paul McCartney because, he's Paul McCartney. And he wasn't sure if Paul was just willing to go in and make this big album together. And so they started, it kind of started as a collaborative project. There was the songs This Never Happened Before, which is on side 2 here, and Follow Me. And after that initial sort of collaboration, Nigel was kind of convinced, yeah, maybe there's something here. Nigel was very hands-on in everything, even the songwriting. Songs like At the Mercy had piano loops. I'm sorry. At the Mercy is something he encouraged Paul to write, but the song How Kind of You had piano loops on it, which was very different from McCartney, a different production style. He also wanted McCartney to slow down the tempo of the song Riding to Vanity Fair. It was a much higher tempo song, and Paul felt like when it was slowed down, it just changed the mood of the song completely. And Nigel was kind of blunt in the way he was sort of like, if the songs weren't good enough, he would just tell Paul. And Paul said that Nigel didn't let him do songs that he didn't approve of. So Nigel was like, if I'm putting my name on this album, I want it to be good. And so Paul had never really had someone that challenged him like that before. And so that kind of raised the album up to a new level. But as a record, as far as later McCartney works, I think this is one of the better ones. Jenny Wren, a beautiful acoustic ballad, much in the vein of Blackbird. English Tea, sort of a very English, British sounding, almost a Beatles track. It's probably the closest thing that Paul's done to sounding very Beatley. That could have very well been a Beatles track back in the 60s. So it's a pleasant listen. The vocals are very upfront and in your face, and the production is very dry. There's not a lot of ornate additions and everything on there, aside from the string arrangement on English Tea makes that song kind of stand out a little bit. Putting it kind of in the vein of like Eleanor Rigby in that type of song. But it's a pleasant album, and it's worth seeking out. Very glad that it finally got reissued on vinyl, because when it initially came out, it was a very limited run, and those of you who were lucky enough to get their hands on it can attest to it. But I'm glad to have this one, a nice, quiet 180-gram pressing that is readily available now at your local record store, and there is a colored edition that is available as well. So you can check that out. But Paul McCartney's Chaos in Creation in the Backyard, the 2018 edition, today's Daily Record. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter. It's TommyBurton75. Love interacting with you guys. In the meantime, I'll see you all again tomorrow with another Daily Record.